2015, I did a thing. I did something that scared me, something that excited me, something that was unknown to me. In 2015, I published a book. That book was called Wrapped in Skin. And from that day, it has changed my life consistently. Almost daily, it has affected me. And my hope is that everyone who's picked the book up from that time has had some impact, been impacted in some way by the words on those pages. This is an opportunity for us to unpack those concepts, to really dive deep. The producers will ask me questions about my journey. Have the concepts changed? Have they evolved? If so, how? You'll get a front row seat to hear me talk to people about what it is to live a life of purpose. What is existence? What is life itself? Why are we here? You'll get to ask your questions, have comments heard and talked about on the show. And maybe at some point, some of you will have an opportunity to come on and talk about your own personal experience and your own life's journey. My name is Justin Jamar Grooms, and I want to welcome you to Wrapped, the podcast. I have no idea. Listen, I don't know what you got going. There's a lot going on out in the world these days. So I have no idea which direction I'm going here. But yeah, let's talk about it. Whatever it is.
How do you get to the point where you reframe the understanding of your flaws being a part of your purpose?
Yeah. Well, it took me a while to realize like I'm uniquely flawed, right? Like I'm, for a while, when I was a kid, I was like, you start to try to correct things that adults or people around you view as like, oh, you shouldn't do that. You should, so for me, it was things like patience, right? Like obviously patience is a virtue, but I'm never going to be as patient as some people are. And what I realized is that I wrote this quote years ago called, "You have to be patiently urgent." And for me, there were so many things that I needed to do and still need to do to this day that I have to have some sense of urgency. So my patience and my urgency have to find a happy medium. Like I have to find a good marriage between the two. When I arrived at that conclusion, I don't know how old I was, but it was just me trying to really consistently ask grace from God for what I considered my flaws. Like, help me overcome these things. And what I got revelation about when I wrote this book was, it wasn't as much about God helping me overcome what I perceived to be flaws as it was about Him helping me switch my perspective on those things. And again, finding that marriage between something like patience and urgency. Too much of either one to me is a bad thing. So I had to find out, where that happy medium was. And it was just about me seeking revelation. Like I was consistently asking it. Now I've always been self-aware. Like I've always been one of these people who's like, if there's an issue or a problem, there's something I can do to solve it. Like I have a stake in it, right? I've always been self-reflective in that sense. I've never been like a finger point. So I've always thought like there's something that I can do to change the situation. So I just was reflecting. What is it I'm supposed to do with this? How am I supposed to overcome this? And as I asked again for revelation, God was like, you're not necessarily supposed to overcome it. You're supposed to know how to work with it. And that's this thing. Like, and I had to realize like everyone wasn't, I think we talked about this. I used to do stuff with my friends and I would feel little basic mischievous stuff that you do when you're 12, 13 years old, right? I used to do this stuff with my friends and it would beat me up for weeks on end. Like, I couldn't shake it. The thought of doing something. Again, we weren't breaking any laws. We were just doing little pranks and we used to throw rocks at cars when we was kids, right? I don't know how many kids did that. I'm sure a lot of kids did. And we used to throw rocks at cars. Now, my homeboys, one time I asked them, like, yo, are you still feeling bad about that thing we did like a couple weeks ago? We're like, what you talking about? Now, when we hit that woman's car with a rock, they forgot about it, like literally forgot about it. And so for me, I recognized early on, like there was just certain things that resonated with me or certain things about my character that didn't hit people the same way. And so I don't know, I just started being introspective, like, why is this? Why am I built this way? Why do I feel this way about certain things? And it's interesting we're talking about this because, you know, the work I do with the Boys and Girls Club, part of what I'm trying to get them to understand is that even the things that they perceive to be flaws or the other people around them perceive to be flaws can be utilized to their benefit. And it's specific to them. Like the speaker we brought in yesterday to talk to the students, he said he was always complaining. Like as a kid, he was a complainer. And he complained about everything. And then he said when he became a young adult, he started to think, well, Kenny, instead of complaining about stuff, why don't you start solving problems? So his need to, when he saw something wrong, to fix it, or when he was a kid, he complained about it because he didn't have the skills to fix it. But that innate need or desire to want to point out an issue was unique to him. And then as he got older, he developed the skills to fix the problem. And so now he works in a field where he works for a private equity fund. And what they basically do is they go buy businesses which are failing, fix them, and sell them. So his career is uniquely connected to what it is that he's intrinsically gifted to do. Like he sees a problem, he complains about it first, and then he goes and tries to solve it, right? So I said all that to say, for me, it was just a journey revelation, like consistent communion with God about why do I feel this way about certain things? Why am I built this way? And yeah, I just quickly realized that even those things that other people consider flaws in your character, sometimes they consider them flaws because it offends them, they're threatened by it. So it may not even be a flaw. They just perceive it to be a flaw. It's really how you take that thing and then utilize it. Because there's a utilization opportunity for everything. And it's just really about, you know, again, you said this switching your perspective. So it was just a lot of spending time with God and communicating with him about what that looks like.
Do you believe that the flaws that you can so easily pick out in other people are actually the deficits that you carry, traits that you maybe admire, but you don't know how? So instead, you see it as a flaw?
Yeah, no, I think that's part of it. I think it's part of an insecurity, right? Like you have a certain insecurity yourself, so you can connect with that thing in another person, and they may have that in abundance. So the thing you're lacking, they have it in abundance. So in order to make yourself feel better, you misconceive it or misconstrue it as a flaw in them, but it's actually something that you're just lacking. You envy. I think that's one. But also, just for practical purposes, I believe that, like, if you and I are having a conversation, right? My eyes are looking at you. I can physically see you, and anyway, I wish I could see her. Anyway, I can physically see you, so it's easy for me to say something about your outfit, your hair, your complexion, because I'm looking at you. I have to make an effort to go look at myself. And that's just for practical purposes. I got to go stand in front of a mirror. What if I don't have a mirror? A lot of people who don't have mirrors don't do the due diligence to find one, right? It's easier for me not to even go work to find a mirror. And I'm using this as an analogy. So I'm not just talking about the physical mirror, but it's easy for me to be like, look, I just don't happen to not have a mirror on hand, so I ain't got to look at myself. But I can see you. I can see what you got going on. And you like, well, why can't you see yourself? I ain't got no mirror. I ain't got no mirror. I had to go find. I have to do my due diligence, and it takes effort to look at myself. So most people just don't want to look at themselves. It's so much easier. And if I'm spending all my time looking at you and my energy focusing on you, then I can say to myself, I have no effort, no energy left over to deal with what I have going on. Subconsciously, that's what I do. All my energy and effort is focused on everyone else, and I don't have enough reserve to now self-evaluate. It's just self-evaluation is a difficult thing. You have to actually first make a conscious decision, or you have to have a conscious thought that I may not be everything I think I am. That has to be the first thought. And then when you have that thought, you have to then be willing to evaluate. And so I've had this thought, maybe I'm not who I think I am. Now you got to actually go figure out who you are. And that's just hard. It's hard for people. It's much easier for me to tell you, like, yeah, you need to fix that. And then now I can assess you and then leave it to you to do the work. I don't have to do anything but assess you. I don't have to do any work. We talked earlier today about this assessment I did for a business, right? The physical assessment was easy. I did that last week. But then I had to write a report and send it to them. The report's the hard thing, because I had to do the work now. Then on the back end, after the report, now I have to go in and help them fix it. Mm-hmm. The assessment is by far the easiest part of that whole process, because all I got to do is observe and point stuff out. The next step is I got to give you possible corrective actions to fix it. And then on the back end, the hardest part is to take action to actually show you how to fix these things.
The thing about therapy is you do get an objective opinion, but you have someone who can give you systems to implement in your life. Yeah. And that is the difference for therapy. And so they can't give you systems if you come in and lie or you're bullshitting, because then the systems don't apply. What are your thoughts on going outside to go inside?
Oh, I love that. It's a great question. I mean, therapy is like I don't want to say a buzz term, but it's like all the rage right now, specifically amongst Black men, which is a good thing. Everybody's talking about you need therapy. Everyone needs therapy. I hear women saying that they will not date a man who has not been to therapy. So I get that. The issue sometimes is where there is a need and there is a financial component attached to the need, there are a lot of opportunists who try to fulfill that need. And so you got people who are life coaches or counselors or therapists. And I'm not saying that you have to have credentials to be great at what you do. But if you don't have real knowledge in this space, you are consulting with someone on their mental health, you can do a lot of damage. And I think that, yes, people should get an objective opinion. That opinion should be professional and highly qualified. When you're talking about someone's behavior, someone's mental health, someone's emotional stability, you have to have someone who is qualified to do what you're asking them to do, because otherwise you're going to do more damage than good, more harm than good. So yeah, I totally think that everyone needs an outside opinion, even if you're not going to a therapist. Maybe it's someone you trust, but you got to understand, if you go talk to someone that you love, they have a viewpoint, they have a lens with which they view life. They also have a relationship with you, and their opinion of what you're working through is not necessarily objective. So if I go talk to my homeboy who I grew up with about what I'm dealing with as an adult, right? He still has a sense of who I was as a child in his head. Now, does he know who I am as a man? Yeah. But his evaluation of his overall evaluation of me can be misconstrued because he still has this sense of who I was as a boy in his head. Whereas if I bring in a qualified therapist who didn't know me as a child, they can see not only who I am right now, but they can also reverse engineer where I am right now. It's a truly objective opinion. So yeah, you should have an outside, objective, qualified person evaluate your situation on an ongoing basis, I think consistently. And I'm also an advocate for having more than one person. Now, some people aren't. Some people say you go to a therapist, you find one you trust, blah, blah, blah. I believe that it's important. It's like if you go get some work done in your house, and I know we're simplifying this, you go get some work done in your house, you're not going to go with the first quote, right? You're going to get 2, 3, 4 quotes so you can compare and see which one is most efficient. And I think it's the same thing with therapists. Like, try a few out, see which ones you like. Also, compare what one said to what the other one said. And probably the best opinion is somewhere in the middle, right? So yeah, I just think we got to be careful with our mental health, and with the popularity of going to therapy now, because it used to be taboo. Like just a few years ago, specifically for Black men, going to a therapist was extremely taboo. Now I'm gonna say this is probably not a popular opinion, but I know this to be factual. There are men, black men who I know, who are aware that women are attracted to men who go to therapy. And they literally go to a therapist so they can tell women that they go to therapy. That's how popular it's become, right? Listen, the reason you go to therapy, whatever, but just make sure you go to one who's qualified. And I'm not just talking about clinical therapists. I'm talking about these people who call themselves life coaches. And again, we're not talking about credentials. I'm just saying, are you really though? Going back to what I do on a regular basis, consulting is, I had a company who talked to me last week, and they wanted someone to come in and talk to their supervisors, their leadership staff about organizational development. They were like, we worked with this company last year. They came in, they gave us a bunch of motivational speeches, they gave us some inspiration, but there were no practical steps. And I said, you mean they didn't give you any KPIs? You know me, and like KPIs are big things. Like, they didn't give you any kind of performance indicators, any measurables, any objectives. And they were like, no. Like, they came in and gave us a good speech, good talk, good overarching theoretical things that we should do, but then they didn't tell us how to roll it out. And I think, yeah, that's extremely important. Like, it's easy for me, going back to me pointing out your flaws, it's easy for me to say what's wrong with you. But now what? Oh yeah, this you messed up in this area. All right. What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do with this information that you just gave me? You just gave me some great information, maybe accurate information. You may be extremely talented. Here's the thing too: there's people who are extremely talented and intuitive at figuring out what's going on with people or with situations, but they're not as qualified in telling them how to remedy the situations. So, and there's people who are good with the remedy, but they're not good with the assessment. And I think a really good therapist is adept at both. Like, they know how to, they intuitively know how to, and instinctually know how to find flaws and things that can be, not necessarily flaws, but things that can be improved upon, or they can find the root of an issue. But they also on the back end can give you systems, to your point, as to how now do we remedy this. I found the root of it. Now now that I know where it's at, now I can tell you how to fix it. So I think it's extremely important. Again, I don't know if people vet their therapy. When I was young, I had, most of my homeboys and homegirls growing up in my neighborhood were products of single parent homes. So almost all of our parents were divorced or separated. Now, my mom and dad never got divorced because it was too expensive to get divorced. They just didn't live together, right? So they just separated and didn't file the paperwork. But it was a norm in my neighborhood. So then I remember when I was probably in 5th grade, and this white kid, it was a white girl, and she was just losing it in class, like ball crying class. And they took her out of class a couple times. I guess they thought she was better, came back into class, and she started crying again. And finally, I had to call her mom to come pick her up. And so it wasn't until later on in the day we found out what's going on. Her parents had just got divorced. And I remember me and my homeboy talking like, what's the big deal? Like, why is she tripping about her parents getting divorced? It is what it is, you know what I mean? And I thought she was just putting on so she can get out of class. I didn't think that was a real trauma. Like, parents getting divorced to me was like the sky being blue. And it wasn't until I became an adult that I realized that I had normalized this traumatic situation, right? I had normalized trauma. And a lot of us have done the same thing. So when you told me that story before, I was like, that's crazy, because I couldn't imagine. My parents separated when I was 4. I never really remember living with my dad at all. He was just like a couple blocks away, but he never lived in a household with me that I can recall. And to me, that was like, all right, it is what it is. That's how everybody is around here. And so going to therapy for that would have been, in my neighborhood, considered extremely abnormal, because I'm going to therapy for something that everyone had gone through. You see? So yeah, that was interesting to me. So, but to that point, I think there's always been this thing about like women's intuition, right? But everyone's intuitive. It's just, and I think we said this before, it's just building up trust to trusting yourself to believe in your intuition. So what I would say to a person who's kind of on the cusp, they're like, yeah, this sounds good, or I don't know which direction I should go. I'm getting some good advice, but I don't know if I should take it. You listen to what's pushing you. Again, I call it the push power. In the book, I say the push power. There's something in you that's pushing you towards a certain direction. The only reason we don't go in those directions is because we talk ourselves out of it. So, mind, body, spirit, who are you going to listen to? So there's something in you that is saying this feels good, right? But then, yeah, it feels good, but I don't know how I'm going to do it. Or it feels good, but such and such told me I shouldn't do that. Or it feels good, but my mom won't approve. It feels good, my boyfriend, blah, blah, blah. It feels good, I can't get this girl if I do that. It feels good, how am I going to pay the bills? So I think it becomes trusting your intuition and whatever direction that's pushing you. If it feels right to do a thing, then do a thing. Now, mind you, as long as it's not harming yourself or harming other people. But if you're getting some advice, meditate on that. And we're not, we can talk about meditation for a whole podcast, but I think when you get to the point where you can sit with yourself, block out all noise and all distraction, and really meditate on whatever decision you're looking to make, you'll get an answer. Now, the goal is to get an answer, because here's what happens. And let me just speak for me. When I meditate, seeking revelation is something, I will get a revelation, I'll get an answer, and immediately they show up almost at the same time. I get an answer, doubt. I get revelation, doubt. Almost at the exact same time. Over the course of me building trust in myself, I can silence the doubt easy. But it's loud, like it shows up loud. You know what I mean? And for a while, the doubt showed up loud, and I was pushing a button on the remote to decrease the volume, right? Now the doubt shows up, mute. You know what I'm saying? But that's practice. That's over time. It doesn't happen immediately. So you have to just continuously silence the doubt. Your instincts will tell you what you're supposed to do. You can call it instincts, you can call it intuition. It's God. It's the Holy Spirit, right? Whatever your belief system is, that's your belief system. For me, what I believe it is the Holy Spirit. When I get intuition, I get an intuitive thought, a push, it's a nudge from the Holy Spirit. But again, right when that happens, doubt shows up. So who it's like musical chairs. Who's gonna get the seat? Like, there's only one seat. There's only one direction to go. It's either your intuition's gonna get it or doubt's gonna get it. So I'm heavy on the mute button.
So how do you know the difference between the two? What is this?
Yeah, because doubt is analytical more often than not. Doubt shows up with a process, right? Here's the thing, it's counterintuitive to what we were just talking about, because doubt shows up with a process. Mentally, you can talk yourself out of it. You can show yourself the way out. You can show yourself an exit. But to sit in it and not really know the steps, that takes trust. That, you know, so when you're in your head, you're analytical about, yeah, man, I mean, this could work, but it might not work. That's usually always doubt, right? The thing where, like, man, this just seems like the right thing to do. Like, all things are lining up. Well, you said before, like, all the things seem to be lining up or happening in a certain order, but you don't have the whole blueprint. You just know, like, man, this happens. This can't be coincidence. Like, can't be coincidence. But you don't have the blueprint. Doubt shows up. Doubt to say, oh yeah, the back door is right here. Just go out the back door. Just take a couple steps back door right here. It's easy. To me, doubt is always the easiest one to lean into. Because if you didn't, here's the thing. If you meditated on it, that means you didn't know. You didn't know the way. So you had to meditate on it to try to receive something. The doubt shows up with an immediate answer. And that's just been my history with it. But again, it's a process. You don't just get to know the distinction between the voices. But I think the longer you take time to, again, block out the noise, know yourself, you'll start to recognize what is doubt and what is your intuition. You'll start to be able to differentiate between the two, because your doubt don't sound like my doubt. Your intuition don't sound like my intuition. And the only way I'm going to know what mine sounds like is to spend time with myself. There's people out here who know more about, you name the celebrity, than they know about themselves. They know chronologically who they are. They can tell you where they were born, where they were raised, who their parents were. But if you say, like, all right, don't tell me about, I want to know who are you? And I don't want you to talk about your career. I don't want you to talk about your relationship. I don't want you to tell me where you grew up. Who are you? And that's a hard task to ask someone to do, to really tell you who they are, devoid of all those existential things, the low-hanging fruit, right? So I don't know if I answered your question, but I believe everyone has a purpose and should be actively seeking it. You know, it's hard to tell. It's hard to say when a person gets to that point in their life, right? It's such an individualistic journey. And sometimes it takes a traumatic event. Sometimes it takes you just being frustrated with your current state of affairs. It's like, man, nothing seems to be working, or everything. Here's what's worse. Everything seems to be working, but I feel empty. And I think that's more often than not. It's like, if I look at everything on a piece of paper, everything's smooth. Good job. I got a house, car, but I feel empty. That's a telltale sign you need to go inward and figure out what it is that's missing in your life. Because clearly all the money, even fame, celebrity, if you got that don't fill that void. Because and again, this is my personal belief, you are here for a reason. It is the only reason you exist. And I'm not saying one, there's multiple reasons or multiple purposes dynamic, right? A lot of people say purpose and they think I'm here for this one thing. Purpose is a dynamic thing. You are here to do something or some things, encourage people, whatever it is. And when you don't do that, your existence feels void. You feel a void in your existence because that's the natural state of occurrence. Like, I'm sitting here to do something. I'm doing everything but that. And I feel empty. Yeah, because your existence is predicated on your purpose. So the moment you feel empty and you look around and you can't pinpoint why you feel empty, that's a telltale sign that you need to go inward. But again, some people it takes, I lost a friend of mine yesterday. Dude I grew up with. He's been, been sick for a while, dealing with some stuff. Nobody expected him to pass away yesterday, and I was feeling some kind of way yesterday before I heard the news. I was like, man, past few weeks, I've been dealing with a lot of stuff. I got work, I got blah, blah, I can't. And then I get a text yesterday morning that my homeboy passed. And immediately, perspective shows up, right? About what am I dealing with? Now, I'm not here to minimize what people are dealing with. You may not be dealing with tragedy to that extent. You may be dealing with something that to you seems extreme. But all it takes is a shift in perspective for you to be like, man, my mentality is misplaced. My energy is misplaced. Like I'm focusing on the wrong stuff. Some people get it early. Some people get it later in life. Some people get it multiple times throughout, because life is, it's not a straight trajectory. So yeah, I think it comes to people in different ways. Some people it shows up, through those tragedies or those situations. Some people they look around their life and they feel empty. And if you're feeling empty and everything looks right, something ain't right here. And that's how you know you need to sit with yourself and figure out what it is you're supposed to do. Because I can see him, I have a remedy to fix it. So that can be, again, that's the through line. Those things are with me throughout this entire life. So as I come into situations where I can apply my intrinsic gifts and talents, I can apply my ability to see certain things, I can apply my problem solving abilities. And that can be multiple things over the course of my life. It's really just about utilizing your gifts to affect the situation as you are involved in, or as it comes up. So I can say, well, my purpose was to write Wrapped in Skin, right? Yeah, I did that in the moment that it was needed. So when I had the wherewithal, the time, the tools necessary to bring this book to life, I did it. And I used my intrinsic gifts and talents to do it. The next thing might be something different, but I would still need to use my gifts and talents to do it. So it's just really recognizing where you can deploy your gifts. That to me is dynamic purpose. I'm just consistently deploying my gifts when the circumstances call for it. That's a wrap for this episode, pun intended. I want to thank you for joining us. We hope that you learned something about yourself. Hopefully you heard something that you had otherwise never thought of in that way. We welcome your comments. Please share, subscribe, talk about this with your friends. Our goal is to talk next time about something that you want to hear specifically. So comment, message us, email us, let us know what you want to hear, what you want us to talk about, what you thought about this episode, and we'll catch you next time. It'll be good.